Hi, my name is Johanna Björkell, and I am your IT pedagogue. You need a word processing app or program. Word, Pages, Google Documents, whatever fits your use. They have differences, all of them, and we'll talk about one of the differences in a later step. So, a presentation app. Very basic in its kind of least refined forms, can become more advanced, especially if you use them with links together with videos or use them as a basis for creating your interactive video. A learning platform, or a so-called LMS. Moodle, Canvas that you're on right now, can be It's Learning, can be Google Education, Google Classroom, can be a blog, can be a web page, can be really anything, because the idea behind a learning platform is that you're sharing all of the different things, all of the material that the students will need in your course. So the learning platform in itself should be very, very easy to use, but also have some excellent strategies. If you, for instance, use Shobi, you can add audio notes and audio comments to your students, and this is something that I work a lot with, which gives the students extra and gives also me added flexibility, and a comment that would take me 20 seconds to say will have to demand a lot of text. You need to learn how to use your camera app and find some kind of an editing app to handle the material that you create. Don't overdo it. Say it short and succinctly. This is my 5th attempt at this video because I have crafted it and honed it and looked at what is really essential to say. And editing should be a breeze. And try not to only sit in your room, because that makes for one boring video. An interactive notice board. When you are using an interactive notice board, it works like a regular notice board in a sense, but you can add any notice to it. Can have anything from URL links, it can have videos embedded, it can have audio notes, it can have text, it can have images. Which means that, for instance, one teacher used it to find out what her students wanted to do for a recreational day that they were having, so everyone could add their note anonymously. Another teacher used it and copied the same layout again and again, and that was having the function of cells in a row of images and their explanation underneath, but they were scrambled. So the student's task was to arrange the images in the correct order and add the text underneath in their own posts underneath the correct one. You can use it to have the students brainstorm a process or a project. You can use it as a small type of blog that does not entail having too much stuff. You can have them document a process that they're creating, have them reflect on their learning. There's just so much you can do with an interactive notice board, but try to look at examples online of what people have used. For instance, Padlet that I'm mentioning and using myself. Try to have people show you how they've used it pedagogically, because that's one of those tools that it's so wide open for so many pedagogical possibilities that is, your limitation is you and how you can use your imagination. But it's a post-it board, online, digital, that you can use forever and ever. You need a quiz tool or an exam tool of some sort. Many of the learning platforms has these functions built in. There are other ones, Socrative, Quizlet, Kahoot, Google Forms, so many possibilities in what types of apps you can use here. And pair this together with your learning platform, because that is when you can kind of get the most out of these question tools, and realize that as a teacher, when you use them, to have that piece of paper with 10 questions on them, and every student handing in one piece of paper, then in order to make it fair, you would have to kind of correct all the question number ones for all 25 students. And that is really difficult. So you end up doing kind of questions 1 through 10 for each student. And then you kind of get stuck on who the student is, not what the particular answer is. So to be fair, this type of correcting that you get, where everyone's answer is all in one place, and you can group them according to the question, you can group them according to the person, and so on. And so please utilize these. They will save you so much time as a teacher. Excel is one of the most widely used applications and programs in the world. And it is also the program that loses companies and organizations the most money. This is due to commas, this is due to bad math, this is due to kind of not understanding what the program does. Did you know that if you have counted something on it, which usually means that you won't get an even answer. It's not always that the answer is 2, but it will perhaps be 2.1956589571. And so you're like, oh, I don't want all of those decimals. And so you lower the amount of the number of decimals that you can see. But when you do that, it only hides the rest of the decimals. It's still counting with them. So in case your spreadsheet has numbers on it, which is euros, cents, dollars, yen, whatever it is on it, and it starts counting with incremental decimals. See, my baby doesn't even like when I say words wrong. Then you are counting with what scammers have been using for a long time. That is to fiddle with the margins. And so if you do not understand that you need to use functions such as round up, or round down, then you will be losing yourself or someone else a lot of money and a lot of effort as well. So please, teachers, teach your students how to use Excel. Learn yourself how to use it too. There's some great resources. I'll list one and one only after this video. A mind map then. Some kind of an app or a program to create mind maps. This is a highly underused tool, and there are so many nice ones and free ones, and using these for students to kind of plan out their projects, to think about things, to list out more complex issues and themes that you're going through, the better for you it is. If they have a long book that they need to get through, adding kind of main themes into a mind map will help with that, as well as exam reading. So, a mind map tool. But one of the more important ones is to collaborate, and to collaborate instantaneously. In digital media, we talk about asynchronous and synchronous behavior online. And asynchronous is that I come in and write something, and that stays there, and you come back in and write something else, and that then stays there. But we don't have to be online at the same time. So for instance, any social media and stuff like that works in that way. If it's synchronous, we all have to be there at the same time. You know, like when you get into a Zoom meeting and it says the host hasn't started the meeting yet. That's synchronous. We have to be there at the same time, all of us. So both of those collaboration models are excellent. So we talked about interactive notice boards. We've talked about face-to-face interaction, for instance with Zoom and stuff. And any type of this is excellent. Using a Facebook group, using Twitter, my favorite is Google Documents. So I come in there to a document via a link that my teacher has sent me. The assignments, it's stated right there what I'm supposed to be doing. And at that point where I've written my part, someone else can come in and be there at the same time, synchronously or asynchronously, and come in there the next day and do their bit and edit your part as well. And so there are also interactive whiteboards, interactive notice boards like Padlet that we talked about, all different kinds of collaborative tools. But collaboration online is one of the most important reasons why you would want to be doing this at all, because that's when things come to life. And so I'll quickly show you with screencasting how I use Shobi and how I comment on a student's handout. So that's me collaborating with my students. But remember that in order for it to be a true collaboration, we have to do things as a dialogue, not as a monologue. So if the student writes an essay and I write my comments back and that's the end of the interaction, then that's not really collaborating. That's the old-fashioned way of doing things, I'd say. So get to the part where you start collaborating truly. So I work with process writing. So that means that my students know that when they hand something in, they won't be done with it. So that means that when they've finished it in some form and handed it in to me, then I will be commenting on it, not giving it any points, not giving it any score, and they will then have to go back in and decide for themselves, like grown-up people, what parts of my comments that they wish to address. And so they address some of those points, and then at a certain date or at a certain point, then I go back in and talk to them again, about these things, and then do kind of a final comment on it, and then give my score, and then give my points. And throughout this, it's also highly likely and very, very common that students also comment back and ask me questions and ask, whether or not something they did resolved whatever problem I was seeing. And so, collaboration! This is why we want to do this, because this is how we move digital media forward. Digitalization, I don't really like that word. My friend and doctor, Annika Wiklund Engblom, usually says that, digitalization is nothing new. It started in the 1960s. So, get with the times, people! A direct messaging tool of some kind. At this point, we're all pretty used to those, right? Zoom, Skype, Facebook, and, not to mention, of course, Facebook Live or YouTube Live and stuff like that. There are a bunch of them. Teams, so on. You need to kind of reach your students, because when you are working online, the biggest factor is actually if you are making the student feel like they belong, like it is meaningful that they're there, without you overusing group work in order to achieve that. So for them to feel like you're there and you have their backs, organize face-to-face meetings with direct messaging tools. Note that Facebook Live and YouTube Live are kind of one way, but they're synchronous. They happen at the same time, which means that when you have something happening right at that second, that means that the student has to be there. So you're not only relying on video, which can also perhaps make the students not watch them. A multimedia book. You can add text, images, links, sound files, videos, really anything that you would need or want. And so a lot of teachers kind of find out about Book Creator or CCB or any of the other kind of iBooks author and start doing multimedia books. And then they either themselves or have their students create multimedia books using only text and images. And this is where you all go wrong, because then you've just created another book. So what about the issue where, let's say that we're learning how to garden. You can tell that I need to kind of attain some skills in that. Not really the best at gardening. And okay, so we have an ebook or multimedia book about gardening. So we watch a video on how to treat or how to sow your tomato seeds. We have a text kind of explaining something else about tomatoes. We have you reading that text out loud as a sound file, which means that the students can then also listen to the same text, which means that you've catered for more opportunities and more learning for everyone involved. And so when you start to create these, then we could have kind of a three-dimensional look at what bugs are attracted to tomatoes, and then we could listen to a tomato plant grow. There is such things on the internet, good people. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Just a short example, one teacher did for Valentine's Day. This was a language teacher. She did this thing where she had, and this was now at a younger age, but she had her some of her students write poems about love. And she then had them place those in Book Creator. So everyone did their own book. And so all of these books were then sent to the teacher, who then compiled a great big book. She then sent that out to a whole bunch of other students in other grades. And some students then recorded the sound for them. They were talking about dramatization. Some created artwork for the page. Some were in charge of doing interviews with the authors, and they had prepared questions and did a video interview with them. And all in all, this entire thing then became a complete book for all of the grades in that school. And everyone had participated in creating the book. And the book was then sent out also to the parents with permission and, you know, like video approval and stuff like that. But it was sent out to all the parents. And then the work continued. So the process work. So that meant that the students were then, you know, they got the book back. And then they were supposed to read their own kind of 2 pages, facing pages that they had compiled around their poem. And they were supposed to read 2 other students' poems. And so the other 2 students, and this is also what you can do when you digitalize, you ask stuff and you make sure, which meant that they then had a questionnaire, and people were allowed to, of course, read how many pages they wanted to. And at the point where they asked, you know, how many other students' pages did you read? Then the answer was that over 90% had read over half of the book. And the book consisted of 96 kind of pages, like each student had 2 pages, and it was like 96 all in all in this, like, and whenever have you gotten students to read half of a book of something that other students have written voluntarily? So this is how you kind of go about doing stuff like this. Don't discount the kind of competition phase that you can have with different tools, because in essence, this is now from a 7th grader, but they were using this tool. It was a language checking tool, and it had kind of 13 different type of exercises that you could use to learn language. And so one of the exercise types that was in there was this thing where you got the definition of a word, and the student was then supposed to read it and guess the word. And they weren't able to put in the kind of correct answer. So the keyboard only accepted like the first correct letter. So if you pressed on A and the word was squirrel, then, you know, it would just be blank. So one of the students, many of the students, kind of figured out that when they didn't know the answer, they would tilt up the keyboard. Listen to this. The students are such amazing creatures. They tilted up the keyboard and then placed their fingers at the leftmost top row letter. And then they drew their finger down. And then they took the next row and drew their finger down, like on a piano, you know, when you go like from high to low with one finger. And until the program accepted one of the letters. Oh, it starts with an S. Okay, I still don't know what it is, so I'll just start from the top row again. Oh, it accepted a Q on the first try. Wow. Oh, do I know something that started with SQ? And so on, until they figured it out, and then they could kind of fill in the last letters. The interesting part about this was that at this point you're thinking, meh, there we go. You know, can't do anything with technology these days. Someone always figures it out. The interesting part was that that same program had kind of a timer. So you got points based on correct answer and what time it took you to get to the correct answer. So that boy, 13 years old, who did that, he went through the quiz again, because now he knew some of the answers. He didn't know all of them, so he still did on some of the questions, but not for as long, and he kind of got to the right answer faster. He then went, let's do it again. I want better points, and I want a better time. So he did it again, and this time he only didn't know one word, so he only on one of the words. So now he knew that. And now he was like, I'm going to get 100% correct, and I'm going to get the fastest time ever. All in all, this same student, 13, very non-school, you know, interested, motivated, however we should put this, did this same exact quiz 7 times, all in all. Because the teacher can kind of see behind the program and see, you know, what did they do and for how long and how did it go. And so that student did this 7 times. And my question is, whenever you handed out a workbook with an exercise and they're supposed to fill out something like of that same nature, whenever did you get them to do that 7 times? So I did this elaborate video. It was when I put together the result of this video, it was an hour and 27 minutes. And at some point you just have to realize, okay, that is a lot of work to edit down an hour and 27 minutes to something usable. So I just figured, I did a great video. I'll show you some pictures. I did it out on the ocean. I did it out in the outer archipelago in a stone labyrinth from, I don't know, 1700s or 1600s. And yeah, it was awesome. And now I went out and did this, which is just the shorter version, in about 25 minutes. I'll have a lot less to edit, and it will probably be just as great. And you'll be happier to not have to watch an hour and 27 minutes. So make your videos shorter. You're excellent though. So remember that anything and everything that you need, apart from perhaps these 10 different kinds of apps or programs, is yourself. You, the excellent pedagogue. And realize that all of these apps that I've mentioned are apps that you can use in relation with each other. And you should. It's not supposed to be like, today we are using a word processing. No. Today perhaps you receive a Word document that has links and instructions and stuff like that, and we're using all types of different things all in concert together. You know, like the single instrument is good, but you know when you've heard a real concert. Don't make it too complicated though. Easy's enough. No kids or animals were harmed in the making of this video. Ow! But mommy, perhaps. Oh.